Hello, everybody. We are here, day 2 of the Catskill International Film Festival, and I have the writer, director, actor, producer with me of the beautiful project, Book of Dan. This is a very moving project. It is a very family-orientated project, and it's something that is special to me because it is shot in the beautiful Catskills. I was just talking to Don prior to this. A lot of people that think of New York when you think of New York City and stuff like that, but New York beyond, when you think of the Catskills, you think of autumn. And this film showcases some wonderful cinematography.
Thank you.
In this special season, and heartwarming project. And Don, if you could just explain a little bit of behind your project and a little bit of how you got involved with it.
I had written a larger sort of feature film project that was released in 2014. And after that project was released, I tried to write another feature film project, and I just wasn't getting it right. So this time I knew that I had a few short story ideas in my head, and I decided that I would focus on short form projects. And this was the first one that came to mind, largely because I had, in the previous feature film project, I had sort of spent all my money, exhausted all my resources, and I shot this during the beginning of the pandemic. And I had to find a way to use what I had in front of me to create a story. And this is sort of what came out of it. And so it really just became largely me talking to the camera and explaining this story, but using a lot of the resources where I was. It's actually shot in at my boyfriend's cabin in the Catskills, and we use that a lot. And and so it was shot during the fall. I think like in at early in the pandemic.
I love to hear stories like this because, too many times I hear great storytellers and filmmakers that have made projects and they're just waiting on that magical, producer to fund their project and whatnot. And I know artists and myself, we can't wait. We are exploding at the seams with creativity, and we just got to get our stories told. And there's really no excuse. If you have a pen and paper and an idea, you can write something and you can create something. You got a cell phone, you can create something. And this is inspirational. During COVID, we've seen so many filmmakers and artists get super resourceful. I mean, they were stuck in their houses or, away from their friends and family for such extended periods of time.
Yeah.
And then in the aftermath of COVID, we get this mass amount of new projects. And I'm excited for you and excited that you created something using limited resources, because one of the things about your project, and a lot of people do it, they get ambitious, they need certain locations and whatnot. You made sure that the fundamentals were hit, and it was important to convey the story that you wanted to do. And with that said, in your own words, what do you think is the most important when conveying a story?
For me, it's always been write about something that, there's the old adage, write about what you know. I remember one person at a film festival asked me, she said, I think your work always seems like it's very personal. And I know for me, that is what's important, I think, is that it's always coming from something that either I experienced or something that I know. And my feature film, The David Dance, I think a lot of that came from what I knew or what I understood too. A lot of that was around family issues and just what I understood from my own family in a fictionalized form, very much. And this and Book of Dan was pretty much the same thing, but in a shorter form.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I really respected and it was refreshing about the project is that you touch on family issues from this LGBTQ standpoint. And the one thing is, when a lot of times when you see this in filmmaking or you have in the past, which is it's changing
Mhm.
now, is there's not a, stereotypical view. The same issues that you guys are facing is the same issues heterosexual families have been facing for thousands of
Yeah.
years. And they've had, your community has had limited representation. And this project, you're talking about family issues and the issues with your children or your son that typically like you wouldn't see and hear about, what you're going to be a go-go dancer, you're going to be, and the thoughts of that. And these are the conversations like when you hear in a heterosexual family, are you going to be a stripper? You really going to do that? You wouldn't expect that. I'm not saying, and that to me is extremely refreshing. When writing material like that, do you ever say, how do I go about this to make this feel extremely natural?
Yeah.
And
It's tricky. I mean, it was tricky for this, it was very tricky. And we also, how to tell the story without going into, right, something that is very stereotypical. One of the reasons that I got into writing is because I kind of felt that even in LGBT stories that I was seeing on the screen, a lot of them were about high school. They were about coming out for the first time. And even the LGBT characters, I didn't feel like they didn't look like normal people. Like they didn't look like they were like super beautiful or, and so I kind of felt like really needed to share my perspective. And it was also, I also think sometimes the LGBT stories that are sold, maybe it's just to sell them better. They can be also very sexualized. I mean, and I think I think that's great to put that into film.
mhm,
If it's but again, I was right. I wanted to write things about the world, kind of that I knew, or the kind of stories that I wanted to see, which was kind of like my family and just whatever my world was like, more like I guess I wasn't seeing things that I wanted to see on the screen in LGBT stories.
that's a great thing that you said. The thing is, you wanted to see a different side
Yes.
of the story and not the typical thing that has been pumped out after the last few years. But this never once when I was watching this project was I like, this feels like it's you know a gay story. This is you know what I mean. This is a natural story,
Mhm.
regardless of what it is about, and that to me is it should be the norm. That it shouldn't be like it's a norm,
Right.
and it's a great thing. With a project like this, you had limited resources. We already know that had to come with its own challenges, but with the limited resources, you had to make this intriguing enough so that viewers would continue, viewing. What did you find the most challenging about, you know, utilizing your resources to create this family dynamic drama and keep it interesting?
Yeah, I was afraid of that because I kind of knew, this is kind of different. He's just talking to the camera. So what am I going to do? I knew I definitely wanted to break it up and sort of, make the most of the environment. So that was key. I think the environment was very key and my boyfriend actually helped me with a lot of the cinematography and sort of the locations and everything that we use. So that was very helpful. We had this autumn theme going throughout, and um, we were lucky, that we were in this location, and we just made the most of that. I mean, and so I think the environment plus me, I think that made it. I think that's what made it
What
helpful to break it up that way. Like I would talk for a while and then we'd go to like someplace in the environment, you know.
was it something that you guys planned, or was it something that just one and two came together?
You know, I mean, I think we worked on it together, and you know, I had an initial. I wrote something, and then we read it, and then he made some suggestions, and then I did rewrites. And actually, he came up with the idea of the crystal ball, like when I'm in bed, or the disco ball when I'm not to give away too
Yeah.
much information, but when I'm having the nightmare.
Yeah.
He came up with that, and then he was actually holding the disco ball while I had the camera like strapped between my legs on the bed. I was on the bed, camera was up here, and he was holding the crystal ball, and I think he was holding a flashlight too, just
Oh
like
wow.
on the.
It's
So we
always
all
these
were
behind the scenes,
like,
behind the scenes video of this probably was very
exactly
entertaining.
right.
It just shows you the ingenuity and the creativity of filmmakers. They want to get their projects done. They do all they can do. I mean,
Right.
you hear about all the time projects on a shoestring budget,
Mhm.
able to make magic happening. Um, yeah, because what I was saying about the autumn, like planning in the autumn season, um, something about autumn in general is we think of autumn and we think of Thanksgiving. We think of like a warm family atmosphere.
Mhm.
While watching this project, you know, when you're sitting there and you're writing, and one of the things that comes past is it feels cozy.
Oh,
The as an audience member, we feel like we're in there too, like sitting by a fireplace or something. It just has that warm look. When it came to cinematography, just to talk a little bit about that, um, what was the plan on that? We just want to shoot something um, that fits, but we want it to feel kind of like something that would be Hallmark.
I mean, I knew. I mean, I knew that like one of my, I mean, as a model, I mean, I had always admired the film on Golden Pond. I mean, there's many others where they would use the nature as sort of a backdrop to the story. And so, you know, that was always kind of an inspiration. But I didn't use, I mean, to be quite honest, I did not use a super fancy camera for this project. I use a Canon M50, which is a prosumer camera. And I think, you know, I mean, yes, I mean, I think the nature scenes came out really well, especially the ones in the daylight with the Canon M50, and I was surprised, you know.
You utilized what you had, and especially when you had the daylight shots outdoors, you utilized natural lighting to the best of your abilities. I mean, though there is some really gorgeous night shots in your project, which is very nice to
Thank
see.
you.
Um, you have, you know, it's really challenging to act on set and build chemistry with actors,
Mhm.
but it's also very challenging when an actor has to put on the performance himself.
Yeah.
This film sits heavily on your shoulders, where you have to perform directly to the camera. At times, how did you not, you know, break that fourth wall, though you're trying to break that fourth wall? Like,
Um, I was very inspired by a movie called Shirley Valentine, where she speaks directly to the camera. For each one, I knew that I had to develop a connection with the audience, where it was just kind of like I'm talking to my best friend. And I
mhm.
knew that I had to have this warmth. And I did like for the ones in the where I'm in writing in the studio, I did quite a few takes. I did probably about and like the first there was like different sets like my first runs, you know, I mean with the, it was I like we would look at the outtakes, you know, from different earlier sections and stuff, and you know I wasn't quite getting it right, and he would give me and my boyfriend would give me notes, and then I would go back and I would shoot again. And I would do about 30 takes, you know, before, you know, on each section I'm just talking about before I really felt like I got it right. Plus, this was like the first time, I mean, on my feature film, I mean, I had a director, I had all these things. And again, I was like scaling back. I was working very simply. And I was doing kind of, as you say, everything kind of, almost on my own. So, yes. So, there was a lot of experimentation in order to get that connection right, I think, before I finally came up with, okay, now this is close to being on the right track. It's funny because for me personally, I have to do a lot of rehearsal in order to create spontaneity as an actor, if that makes any sense. Like I have to do that much rehearsal just to get comfortable with everything, and then I can be spontaneous, and then I can be free, and then I feel like I can be more natural and really uh, establish a connection with the audience.
That makes a lot of sense. You hear a lot of actors that are like, they improv stuff.
Mhm.
For yourself with this, I mean, you wrote your own material. Did you get comfortable with the material before you felt comfortable enough to like play around with your
Yeah,
character? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I had to like rehearse it, and I would even film it as I was rehearsing it. For some reason, that made it easier for me. I actually I teach high school drama. And what I have them, and we work on like a Shakespeare monologue every semester. And what I have them do is I have them get in front of the camera, and I'll just have them say, "Okay, just learn two lines from this Shakespeare monologue." And they have props and they have costumes, and they love getting in front of the camera. And for some reason, that makes it more alive for them. Suddenly they become alive and they like rehearsing it, and they become more connected to the material that way. So it's just something that works, they have
Yeah.
fun.
That's a beautiful thing. Teaching the craft to our youth, to be on future actors. When you're looking back on this project, you did what you did. It's in the can. It's edited. Let's just say you had a master budget and things, whatever. What would you do differently if you would do anything differently at all?
I still think about, adding inserts to, having inserts to include the son, just where we see him talking, and then maybe him, graduating, and then, also the mother, which is Barbara. I have thought about that. I don't know if that's, but I mean, like I've shown it, I show it to my boyfriend, and he's like, "You don't need those things. You really don't need those."
It's the director's curse. I feel like every creator, writer, whatever you may be, they look at their material and they're like, I should have added this. And then
Yeah.
and there's some out there, I see it all the time where they re-edit their work and they have like 10 different versions of their films.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, though I'm the same way, one of the things about myself is I always want to jump onto the next project because it's like
Yeah.
I don't want anything to become stale. And
Yeah.
then if you try too hard, sometimes it even ruins it itself. Like,
Yeah.
it's like in that moment, Book of Dan, in the moment you made it, it was special to you. You were COVID, you were trying to be inspired by the time. You wanted to create something. Would it have that same impact if you were to just start filming it now than it did
Right.
then? So looking back on it, that moment is a piece of your life, and it's probably very special to you.
Mhm.
Um, when you're thinking of 2020, a chaotic year, and you started creating this thing that doesn't feel like a lot of the projects that came out that year had a lot of political unrest and people fear mongering and sickness, and you have a family orientated project. It's a refreshing take.
Thank you.
So speaking about all this, what would your advice be to aspiring filmmakers who, you're a teacher yourself. I'm sure your students are curious about what the film industry is like or whatnot. What would you tell them if they said, "Look, I'm looking to get rich"?
Mhm.
And everyone thinks when they think of movies, you don't know how many people, like I do a film festival, and a lot of people reach out to me as like a producer and think that I'm like rolling in dough. I'm just an artist that loves this stuff. I
Right.
enjoy speaking to filmmakers. But it's got to be a labor of love. It's got to be something you're
Yeah.
passionate about. What would your advice be to
I mean, I would say learn about literature, because if you can study what really, and I think this is often skipped over in film schools, to like really to like read plays, learn what a really good structure is. And I don't think they really do. I would work on some student projects where it was kind of like they didn't quite where it just wasn't, they didn't quite have the story fully formed yet. And I think, I think I think if you have a good story, the rest is going to follow. I mean, of course, yes, you need to have a good crew, and you need to have, people, eyes on the project. But I think, it's also important to have a really good understanding of what is a good story in the first place? What is good structure?
yeah.
And I think sometimes that is often overlooked in film schools.
I think a lot of thing too is people have a lot of self-doubt in their work, and they take people's opinions literal. Everybody's got an opinion, and we all know what the other statement is. Everyone's got something else too. Um, there's no need. People like won't do something based on what they were told, and not everybody has the correct answer. There could be 100 people that dislike this film, but there could be one that ex- really loves it, and this is like to them a Kubrick film. It all depends, and there's no right or wrong answer. And that's the great thing about art is it's subjective. And there's films in this festival that like I hear people wonder somewhat, well, how was this accepted, or this was so good. And it's just really tough to you can't make everyone satisfied.
No.
And that's, I don't know, I think that's the one goal, or to really instill in people, is you're not going to make everyone happy, but at the end of the day, if what you're doing makes you happy, you know go for it, go for the gusto. So when you're doing this and you were going for the gusto on this project, was there at any time hard artistic choices that you had to make in the filmmaking process that you were like, at any stage of the production? It could have been writing, um, or even in the editing process, where you're like, man, I don't want to cut this, but like pacing, we got to make sure the pacing is correct. We don't want to overindulge.
Because I was trying to write a feature, and that just was not working out. We had like a couple of readings in New York of this feature that I was working on, and I just couldn't get it right. And I don't, looking back on that, I think I wasn't ready to tell that story yet. But I think because I came off of that and was ready to just work with what I had. I don't think there was that much cutting or editing or hard choices to make. Like, in other words, I wasn't putting such a high standard on myself. I wasn't thinking like, okay, this is going to be kind of like when I did my feature, there was a very high standard. And kind of what you were saying, when I was going through the editing process, I would have everybody look at it. I would invite friends over, and I would say, so what do you think of this? And what if I put this here and that there? And very long, long, long editing process I went through on that film. And, kind of just, and I think it was because I had gone through that. I was just ready for something different, and working on this, there wasn't so much of that.
Yeah.
So this was kind of refreshing that way. I mean, but in terms of change, there were things that were changed. I remember like the first draft just wasn't, there was a lot of dialogue that I didn't need. And then I just rewrote it, cut it down, took the notes, and just, you know, I think the second draft was the one that was kind of like working. And then I just kept reshooting. And then, we would look at those, and then we would make a change to a line here and there. But it wasn't anything, because I didn't have so much at stake on it. I didn't feel, because I wasn't investing so much financially into it, that it actually made the artistic process better, because I was just, okay, whatever,
That's got to be such an uplifting feeling, is
yeah,
when you're free. The one thing that a lot of people don't understand is a lot of times with producers, there's beautiful producers. I'm not throwing dirt on anyone, but a lot of times when you have certain producers or companies or whatever backing you, they have some bit of control over what you do, how you edit, stuff like that. But when you take that true bare bones independent approach on a film, it is freeing. It makes all the difference in what you can do,
yeah,
and more people need to take that risk, because it is a risk.
yeah,
The risk is you have to do more work. You got
yeah,
to wear multiple hats, like
yes,
Don here. This guy with all these hats he's got to wear, and I can definitely empathize with you. I also act, direct, produce, and I like it that way because, in the end of the day, I want the story that I want to be told,
yeah,
and but you got to do more work. There's more work behind that way of approach, but there's less stress on. I don't have to appease, you know, this, that, and the third. The only person I got to be happy with is myself,
yeah,
and it's a learning experience.
yes.
Every time you do it, every project you do, you're learning more and more. With this project in particular, was there anything in particular that shined out that said this was a learning experience?
I think, I think I would try to, I mean, from the technical aspect, I think I kind of think I would try to upgrade the camera and just kind of like my knowledge of all that, just the cinematography aspect. Although you know, I'm pleased, that, every, that the everybody, that everybody thinks the cinematography is good, but I just know from my, I would just try to have more knowledge about that. And also, even the sound and just, everything on the technical side and everything. The sound, I actually went to a sound mixer and he did some things too that helped it a lot. Um,
Like I said, it has a very good feel. When I'm watching your film, it has a very cinematic feel.
oh, thank
And
you.
I'm not trying to gas you up, and I've been telling this to a lot of filmmakers. Like, I would never lie.
Mhm.
I just wouldn't say it. Like, that's the one thing. Like, I got some shit to say about some projects. They might not be accepted, but I won't say it if
Yeah,
I don't mean it.
right.
So that's my whole thing, and
Well,
I
thank
think
you.
there's that constructive criticism that a lot of filmmakers give, and then there's those people that are just the naysayers. And
Yeah,
I tell people to keep on creating, and that's what I love about this project. It's inspirational to me. The fact that it was filmed and created during the crazy times of COVID, and here in the Catskills, every time people are doing these productions and they think about the city, New Jersey, PA, all these big mega centers, the Catskills is where I like to see projects shot. And
yeah, no,
yeah, we're a film festival here, and I love all films, but it's great to see the backdrop in this area. There's a lot of great people. There's a lot of great talent in this area, and I just want to see more. So, with this said, and I don't want to hold you too long. You're a busy guy, I'm sure.
it's fine.
What is next?
So this is the first part of a series of short films that I want to do. The next one I want to do is called About My Uncle, and it's kind of a fictionalized version of uh, a meeting that I had with my uncle and sort of stories that he told me about my family and my father. And it's I'll be playing a gay character again, and how that, how that influences, how those influences work together, in the family story. You know.
That's a very wonderful thing. I'm thankful for you, Don, for submitting this project to us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You could have submitted anywhere, and you chose the Catskills, and it means a lot to us. I could tell you, the committee, the screeners, they really were enjoying your project.
Well, thank
you. With that said, to the audience out there, if you liked Book of Dan, on our website, CatskillInternationalFilmFestival.com, we have our voting polls. There is, an entire selection for audience choice films, and Book of Dan you can vote for. And I hope you find success in our festival on October 27th.
Thank you.
Regardless, you're here. People enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what's next from you as a creator. Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you.